Let's set the scene. It's the tail end of the Legends Festival 2024's after party. Future stocks are up, Ultra Beast Gohan is the latest in power creep, and Ultra Majin Vegeta is still running rampant. Enter Legends Limited Fusion Zamasu. He's a red unit. Yeah! UMV and UBG users cower in fear, and the community rejoices as they venerate the most noble, most splendid, immortal, and supremely powerful god. If you were actually playing Dragon Ball Legends, then you'll know that that's not quite how things panned out.
What's up guys, it's Quandale Dingle here.
In my opinion, LF Fusion Zamasu is a great unit and is well designed. He's not without his flaws, and I do wish they gave him mechanics such as cover change prevention and indestructible given the state of the meta, but I'm all for more units like him over the modern Ultra any day. Now then, I'm going to explain to you the actual significance of LF Fusion Zamasu's release, how that highlights the biggest problem the game has and has pretty much always had, as well as propose a long-term solution the devs should consider. LFMZ's Z ability shows us that he's primarily intended to buff the Future tag. If you take a look at Future's QC Red melee characters, you'll notice that his competition for a core slot is only LFCMZ and UVB. While I believe LFMZ's utility makes him the best overall, I could still see a reason to run either of them over MZ. This is a good thing. Releasing a unit that's unique and rewarding to play with a top 5 pick at the highest rank isn't an auto select on the team he was primarily intended to buff, and is strong but not a hard counter to the best yellow units is not far from what a balanced unit looks like. So why isn't that enough? First of all, unit releases are probably planned months in advance, otherwise we would have seen the devs drop hard counters to problematic units far more frequently. This leads me to believe that MZ was not actually made to hard counter UMV and UBG, even if the devs were at least partially, if not fully aware of the effects the two would have on the meta. Chances are, they more or less already had a design in mind for LF Fusion Zamasu before they had sufficient data to prove exactly how problematic UMV and UBG are. Secondly, LF Triku, who released during the 2024 Z Movies campaign, is a perfect example of how even a well-designed unit who is a great counter to Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta by itself was not enough to dethrone UG4 as the best unit in the game. It was only after the next release, Ultra Turles, that he was no longer the undisputed #1 unit. On the other hand, LF Final Form Cooler, who released during the 2022 Powerful Opponent campaign, was designed to hard counter Ultra Super Vegito, who released merely 2 months prior for the 4th anniversary. You couldn't even bring USV or any Super Saiyan unit for that matter into a match without getting penalized for simply existing. Notice how the first example is healthy for the game even though the counter character was still the most dominant pick. The second example, however, is unhealthy for the game because it penalizes you just for using anyone on a specific tag, forcing the hard counter unit to rely more on a specific matchup than strategy. Legends would have been in a healthier state if they released more units like LF Triku, but instead, the devs chose the merciless route with the release of Ultra Majin Vegeta in the 2024 Showdown with the Majin campaign. To this day, I am genuinely puzzled by the way he is designed. Congratulations, UG4 has been crushed and thrown into the wind, along with pretty much everyone that released before him. This creates a forced meta shift that doesn't actually increase the value of units, even if they are theoretically more viable since their most influential counter would drop in usage. Now, this may be a hot take, but giving UMV something absurd, such as a lock-in AoE ultimate that can one-shot UG4, nullify endurance, and can also nullify unfavorable elements, isn't the recipe for making existing units more viable. Imagine that. Finally, this game has reached a point where even the best counters to the strongest characters are not enough to disincentivize players from continuing to use them. The main argument against LFMZ is how he's a red unit that doesn't reliably tank burst damage from the strongest yellow unit in an optimal scenario. However, this same argument can easily be made about any meta-relevant unit released during the same time period as the problematic units, as well as any new units going forward. This argument says more about the state of the game's mechanics and just how much control over the meta the best units have, rather than point out an issue specific to MZ, and therefore this isn't indicative of him being a failed release. While he definitely has a glaring weakness in the current meta, I don't believe there are significant points against him to deem him a failure of a release. By that logic, LF Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, Sparking Mai, and LF Mini Super Saiyan Goku would be considered failures too. Offensively, none of them have concerning problems against Majin Vegeta or Beast. However, they are sitting ducks defensively without having a favorable element, which is when tanking matters most. LF Fusion Zamasu is unfortunately in the same boat. Simply having a favorable element won't save most units anymore because it just becomes a non-factor in the most crucial moments. This is the direct result of the devs choosing to make offense that much stronger than defense in this game. The truth is, the devs kinda shot themselves in the foot, not with Zamasu himself, but the meta he was thrown into. This is not a problem that can simply be fixed by slapping a red sticker on a balanced unit and expecting a major meta shift, and I feel like the devs probably know that. LF Fusion Zamasu is more of a dark horse than the savior many of us were hoping for, and that's okay. We're not saved from the endless chaos in PvP, but at least we're not under new management either. Like it or not, Fusion Zamasu is here to help us fight the good fight, and that warrants him some respect in my book. Now to address the elephant in the room. The biggest problem in Dragon Ball Legends is one that no unit has ever escaped from: power creep. While it will inevitably always exist due to the nature of comparing units with any amount of uniqueness, the level at which it has escalated to is unhealthy for the longevity of the game to an astronomical degree. Zenkais and unique equips, which are the main ways to make older units meta-relevant, do not release frequently enough, nor are they typically impactful enough to actually shift the meta. The devs could release 10 red units in a row that are meta-relevant, but if they are not also meta-defining, the meta doesn't actually shift all that much. However, that's not to say that these units don't matter. Not every unit can be meta-defining by definition. I believe the most efficient way to manage power creep is to experiment with the boost system. Tier Z would be the easiest place to start, since these units are there for a reason. The devs can apply so many traits to these older units all at once, narrowing the gap between the strongest and weakest units. Dragon Ball Legends has had several hundred units lost to time, each a part of the game's history, and I think they have faded into obscurity for far too long. Maybe the real counters are the units we met along the way. For now though, we are so cooked. Let me know what you think about LF Fusion Zamasu's release and what you think the devs should try to minimize power creep. Until next time, y'all.
What a joke!